Today we're going to talk about 18.2, Infragistics Ultimate, the fastest path to amazing experiences. Thank you, Andrew, for highlighting that. With us today is Brian Lagunas. He's our product owner for all things XAML and our tools across all of our products, including the CodeGen stuff you're going to see in Visual Studio Code today. Robert Stofers is a developer on the product itself, and he will be available to answer questions. George Abraham is a senior UX designer and product owner across our design tools, and Stefan Ivanov is a director of user experience, and he is also heavily involved across all of the UI kits and all of the UX tools, as well as the UX that actually goes into the product. And my name is Jason Barris. I'm the Senior VP of Product here at Infragistics. And today we're going to talk to you all about what's new in Ultimate for 18.2. Before we start, what I'm going to do is rifle through a few slides that just give you a highlight of what's in the product and kind of areas that we're focused on. Many of you are already customers of either a single product, like a specific platform, or Infragistics Ultimate. Everything we're going to cover today is available in Infragistics Ultimate and Infragistics Professional, with the exception of the CodeGen and Indigo Design product, which is for Ultimate, or you can buy that separately. So the big area that we've been working on the last 12 months, maybe a little bit longer, is Angular. I'm going to show you some demos today about a lot of the new features we've added, but what we're seeing a lot from customers is around moving to desktop to web, and across the enterprise, we're seeing a lot of folks moving to Angular. So if you're looking at going to a more modern web experience and your team has decided on Angular, then Ignite UI for Angular is the place to go. It's 50+ widgets, progressive web app support, virtualized grid. We just shipped a virtualized tree grid. We have the fastest charts and grids in the world. But on top of that, we have great productivity tooling in Visual Studio Code. We have a command line interface. We've got a toolbox plugin. We've got a tooltips plugin. And then, like you'll see today, the ability to generate Angular code from Sketch right in Visual Studio Code. A lot of you guys may also be looking at React. We are shipping a React product in the December timeframe. What we're doing there is it's going to be a web component base, and we'll have React API on top of the core web components. So we're moving a grid, a chart, Excel library, and a few other components to just pure TypeScript, not dependent on Angular. The nice thing about Ignite UI for Angular is that it's material-based and it's built on Angular for Angular. So you get all the benefits of that Angular rendering pipeline, of templates, and everything that goes along with building on that platform. But because React is still half the market, we want to address that as well. So stay tuned in the December timeframe for announcements on that. A lot of you guys are still doing modern desktop. WPF is actually growing across the enterprise today. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of net new WPF development, a lot of upgrades happening. We're still investing in WPF across the board. You'll see some of those features today. But the idea is, if you are doing desktop, we are not abandoning desktop as far as WPF or Windows Forms. We're continuing to invest. You'll continue to get service releases, new features in every release that we're shipping. And then, of course, if you're doing native mobile, our story there is really around Xamarin. We did a lot of work on Xamarin over the last few years. So we have Xamarin Forms, Xamarin iOS, and Xamarin Android components. So we have beautiful high-performance charting. We have a really great grid. We've got scheduling and a bunch of other components. And this really does give you that native experience on the device if you're building Xamarin. Xamarin hasn't like skyrocketed in usage across the board, but there's still a lot of great apps doing Xamarin. And if your team is using Visual Studio, and if you're used to using C# and you want to go mobile, it's actually the perfect choice to go. Another feature I want to really highlight is for the folks that are working with UX teams, or you want to do some sort of prototyping. In June, we shipped Indigo Design, which allows you to do image-based prototyping in the cloud. So you can design in Sketch using our UI kits, upload to the cloud. You can collaborate with your users with threaded commenting, share prototypes on their devices, etc. You can create unmoderated usability studies in the cloud, so you can get quick answers to UX questions that you might have. And included with that is a full video record and playback of those user interactions. So a lot of the folks on the webinar today are developers, but they do work with UX folks. Most UX teams that we're running into today seem to be using Sketch. So if you're building with our UI kits in Sketch, you have this great story all the way across, including Angular code from those Sketch designs, which we're going to do a demo of today as well. And this is where you get this really huge time savings. If your design team is using Sketch, they're using our UI kits, they can create as many pages as they want for your application. They can go ahead and test it with the users, and then by the time it gets to you where you want to get HTML, CSS, and even TypeScript from those Sketch designs, our Visual Studio Code plugin will take over and auto-generate that for you. It's an amazing time saver. It's truly an amazing experience, and you'll see a demo of that in a few minutes. So now that you have a quick overview of what's in Ultimate, many of you know that, but I think there's a lot of new things in there, especially around what we're doing in Angular and what we're doing in Sketch. Let's take a look at what's new actually in 18.2. What did we ship last week? So there's 3 areas of focus in 18.2. Number 1, we are still focused on being the fastest grids and charts in Angular. This is super, super important. So not only from initial load time, but to having virtualized rows and columns, to be able to have dozens to hundreds of columns with tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of rows in a grid or a chart. We want to be the fastest, and we do believe we are, and the proof is in the pudding. We'll show you a little bit of that today. We also have done a ton of work in Excel. This is super exciting. Brian's going to demo this, but the biggest news for Excel is that we've moved our entire Excel library over to TypeScript, so you can use it in an Angular app as a native Excel solution on the client without needing Excel, including charts and Sparklines support. So that demo is going to pretty much blow you away. And then finally, to blow you away for the 3rd time, we're going to show Design to Code with Sketch and Angular, which is the whole Indigo Design product. So let's take a look at the fastest grids and charts in Angular. Before I get into that, just a quick view of everything that's in our Angular product. With the Angular product, we've sort of followed the same path as we have our Windows Forms and WPF and jQuery products. Is we've built a bunch of components, pretty much everything you need to build out a really great application in Angular. Everything from the big components like a data grid, like the charts, like calendaring, to things like combo boxes, Excel library, navigation, full editors, all the things that would make up a modern application in Angular, including mobile. So when you think about snack bars, toasts, things like that, the entire interaction model is based around Material. It's really smooth. So pretty much if you install Ignite UI for Angular, you get everything that you need to build out that experience. In 18.2, a lot of work was done on the grid. So the way this product works is everything's up on GitHub, our roadmap's up there, all of our issues are up there, and we're doing continuous delivery. So we have milestones that we try to ship major features every 3 months, but we're also shipping things on a daily, weekly, bi-weekly basis as things come up. So you'll see a lot of activity on this product because there's a lot of features that you guys are asking for, and there's a lot of features that we want to add. So in the last 6 months, we've added things like row editing, batch transactions, all of the column interaction stuff you'd expect from coming from WPF or Windows Forms, like filtering, grouping, column moving, column hiding. A couple nice features like grid searching. This is a full text search on the grid. Sort of works like you're searching a web page and you type in a few characters and it highlights everything in yellow, and you can just skip between those items. That'll do every column in the grid, not just a single column. We also, unique to this product, is we've added a grid toolbar, which allows you to not clutter up the UI of each column header if you want to do things like column hiding, column pinning, column, etc. It's kind of a neat way to give a better user experience for the end user. We've also added paste from Excel, multi-column header support. Because our product is based on Material, Material is a very airy sort of look and feel. There's a lot of white space. Well, if you're building a line of business app or financial app, you don't want a lot of white space. So we added a display density property, which allows you to really tighten up the data density on your page so you can get more stuff displayed, like in a grid, in a calendar, in a tree grid. It really doesn't matter. And then another feature which really does help on performance, instead of using something like an ng template every time you want to change a cell style, we have conditional cell styling in our CSS, new in 18.2, and I'll give a little demo of that as well. We've also added a bunch of new controls. From that initial screen I showed, there was like 50 plus controls. We have 30 plus chart types, but we've also added brand new tree grid, combo box, drop down, and you can see the list here. This is really just continuing to round out what you need to build out an experience. And we look at these as building blocks. So if you think like, oh, we've added a drag and drop directive and we've added an overlay component. Well, these are things that you can combine to make other experiences that we may not include in the product. So we're doing this similar approach to what we've done across all of our products in the past to make sure you have the core fundamental building blocks, and then you can always build on those, extend them, but at the same time giving you a really robust set of components on top to build those applications. In charting, we've done a ton of work on charts. So you'll see today some nice demos on business charts and financial charts. The one thing I want to highlight here with our charts is the category chart itself is the same component that you're getting in every platform. So if you're doing charting in WPF, and as you know, it's a really simple API. We have a smart data adapter that renders data based on what it looks like. Like we figure that out, and it just plots the chart. This is the same thing in Angular. So if you're doing WPF, Windows Forms, iOS Xamarin charting, you're moving over to Angular, it's a seamless transition. And then we've added a bunch of nice to have features in 18.2, and I think they'll really come out in the demo as well. And then financial charting, we introduced this earlier in the year, but we did a whole new redesign on the user experience. One of the things we realized is that especially on responsive apps that have to run nicely on tablets and mobile, that our toolbar didn't behave maybe how you might expect. So we did some work here, but the gist of the financial chart is with one line of code, you get the entire shell experience of something that you would normally have to write a bunch of app code to get. So you get all the indicators, the volume indicators, the trend lines, filtering, and then being able to add different chart types along with the zoom bar. So if you look at a Google Finance, Yahoo Finance experience, you can build the same thing here with the financial chart. So before I jump into a demo, I'm going to talk about Excel real quick, and then Brian is actually going to show this demo. But on Excel, across the board, we've always had the Excel library in every platform. It's new in Angular for 18.2, but you'll see my two sunbursts here as the last two bullet items. That's the new feature across the board on every platform, and that's the ability to create sparklines and cells and to create Excel charts in worksheets. So what this means is since you have the full Excel API on the client, you can create workbooks, add worksheets to those workbooks, add name table ranges, all in code, and then you can even add charts. So if you want to create business dashboards for your stakeholders, you want to do some richer reporting, this is actually the perfect solution, and you do not need Excel on the client to do this. And then as well, we've invested more in features on the spreadsheet control. So the spreadsheet control comes in WPF Windows Forms and jQuery. It's not in Angular yet. We're actually working on that right now. But we've basically duplicated every dialog and every capability that you have inside of Excel. So the experience gets really sweet. This animated GIF that I'm showing right now is actually our custom dialog. If you right-click in Excel and you compare both those dialogs, you'd be hard-pressed to know which one is the Infragistics dialog in the spreadsheet control or which one's actually in Excel. So it's pretty sweet what we've done there. And then finally, with Design to Code with Sketch and Angular in the Indigo Design system, we've added a much requested feature in Sketch which allows you to synchronize designs directly to the cloud from Sketch. So the way that Indigo Design works is it's basically three pieces. You have UI kits, patterns, and components that your UX team can build out designs in Sketch. There's a cloud piece where you synchronize those designs where you can do image-based prototyping, collaboration with stakeholders, usability studies, and then the third piece is taking that design from your workspace and then generating code from it. So we're making improvements across all three, but the big one for 18.2 is really around this Sketch plugin. George is going to demo that, and then Brian's going to finish it up with generating code from that synchronized design inside of the cloud. So with that, let's run to a demo since pretty much that's what everyone wants to see. Let me bring up Chrome. Let me just remind everyone how to get to where I'm at. So from our main menu on the Infragistics homepage, if you click Ignite UI for Angular, this is where I'm going to focus this part of the demo on. Brian's going to show a little bit of WPF and Angular. From here, we've got actually running samples in the browser, and it gives you a flavor of some of the features that we actually have. If you recall from the slides, we have the full grid search. So for example, if I start typing, I type the letter I, it says there's 4,123 results for I in this grid, and as I'm clicking through, it's actually highlighting each I with an orange highlight. So it's actually a pretty useful feature. So if I want to not do a column level search, I just want to type United for United States, they all come up. I can go ahead and clear this out. Now at the same time, if I scroll through this grid, let me go down to a column that has some different items in it, like the tags column. You'll see cool, medical, subscriber, etc. We have this filter UI now, so I can go ahead and add different filter values. So I want to do CO, and then I want to add another filter value for ME, and it will allow me to add as many filter values on an anding or oring basis as I want within this grid per column. When I jump over to another column, I still have access to the chips that are on this column. It just depends on how I want my users to interact with it. So now if I scroll back over, you can see that there's a chip here. There's a little indicator that says, hey, there's a filter on this column. And let's say I didn't like what I filtered on. I want to get rid of that guy, and I just want CO, and I want to update it to OLD, and now it's going to give me everything in this column that has cold. So you can do as many searches as you want. You have contains, does not contains. These are all sensitive to the data type of the column. So it's a pretty innovative filter UI. We think it's pretty cool, and we look forward to your feedback on how you might like this filter UI versus the standard WPF filter UI, which is like a drop down and you have to use your mouse to hit the tiny button. So as well here on this sample, column hiding, I can easily use the grid toolbar. It will automatically populate this drop down with all of the columns that are available in the grid, and I can show and hide as many columns as I want. And the same goes for column pinning. Column pinning allows me to pin columns to the left, and I can do that all from the grid toolbar. And at the same time, of course, we have the native export to Excel capability. So here I just click the little down arrow, and this exported this grid right to Excel, and you can see that all the data ends up being in there, and I get all of the filtering capability that you have in Excel, and the fact that this is a table, so we actually do export the actual table. So there's two ways to actually export the data. What I call the native Excel exporter is just a simple XML template that we ship with the grid, which makes just exporting the content really, really fast. We put a table in the grid, we give you filtering, and then that's it. If you want to use the entire Excel library, that's where you get really a lot of these cool features like conditional formatting, charting, all these other things that Brian is going to show you in both WPF and in Angular. So this is like a quick idea of some of the nice features on the grid, some of the core business features. Also, you see here column summaries. On this website as well, you can jump to any number of features and jump right into the sample browser. But before we do that, I just want to scroll down a bit, show you that we have the same idea here for charting. You can jump into any one of the charting features right from the home page, jump into the Indigo Design story. We talk about our CLI with NPM to get started with apps, the app gallery, which Brian is going to touch on as well. And then, of course, you can jump into any control. So if I go ahead and I click Data Grid, I'm right into our sample browser. And the difference in this sample browser versus what we've done in the past in our jQuery JavaScript product is we're trying to include not only the demos, but all of the code and all of the help in a single document. So it makes it sort of a one-stop shop for you to really understand how this particular product works along with the API, known limitations, etc. So it's much easier to start and just get going with the product. Now earlier when I mentioned fastest grid on the planet, on the main data grid page, we have the live updating demo. And this is something, we do a lot of work with financial services, and this is a demo that we really love to show there because it allows you to see that not only the features of the grid, so for example, this grid has by default 1,000 rows. I think it has 60 columns in it. And as I scroll in this grid, you can see that it's buttery smooth, super fast. And by the way, you can see this for yourself. It's all live on the web. I'm running this directly from the Infragistics website. But what I want to do is I want to add a few more rows to this. So let's add 10,000 rows. And you can see that the scrolling performance behaves identical. I can also click live prices. And now what it's doing is it's updating the price columns on this grid. So you can see that the red and the green are changing at different intervals for this specific grid. So this is your typical stock trading example where a lot of stuff is happening in the grid. Not only do you have a lot of columns and rows, but you've got sorting enabled, you've got grouping enabled. So here I'm going to kill a couple of the groups, and I can go ahead and I'll scroll to the right, and I want to do category by region. So I'll go ahead and group this, and it's super fast. I mean, there's no lag time in anything that's happening here to create any of these groups, even while it's doing this real-time update. Another nice feature we've added in this grid is the ability to collapse and expand all rows. You can also select and deselect rows from the toolbar header, or I can go ahead and do simple column selection with the checkbox, with the keyboard interaction. This has the same filter UI that we saw earlier. So here, if I just want to look up everything in Ethiopia or the United States, it'll do a real quick OR filter, and or anything with UNI. So we got Tunisia in here as well. So that's pretty sweet. Another area is on theming. This sample demonstrates the light theme as well as the dark theme, so you can swap these out pretty quickly. And then the other area to notice in this grid is that the display density is pretty tight. So this is using our cozy or our compact display density, which will show more data on the actual form. And you get the same grid toolbar that I showed you earlier. And something to set up a grid like this is super, super easy, super fast, and it does demonstrate real-time updating in the grid. So I recommend everyone really check that guy out. Another sample I wanted to show for this release, a new feature in column moving. So column moving allows you to, with the mouse, drag and drop columns and reposition, or you can actually reposition within the column pinned area, which allows those columns now to stay pinned. And you'll notice there's no lag time here. I mean, this is happening real time within the DOM, really, really fast, and it feels really solid. So it almost feels like a rich client application. Group by, another new feature that we just shipped. This sample here is showing different sorts on the group by, but essentially it works just like you would expect your WPF or Windows Forms group by to work. I can take a column header, drag it into the group by area, and then I get a lightning fast group. The group headers, of course, are templatable. You can customize what's up here. We've customized it with some numbers and some summary data, but it's really up to you how you want your grouping to work. And then batch editing, being able to do inline editing ends up being something super important in the grid. But what we've also added is the ability to batch edits with the transaction service. So I'm going to go ahead and just change a few items here in the grid. I'm going to make this one true. I'll change this dollar amount to something different, and I'm going to go off to another row. You'll notice this row did not commit. It has a italics text in the cells that I changed. So I'm going to change this guy to be just syrup, and I will delete this column and this one. And so the grid is actually collecting all these objects in a JSON object, and then you can decide whether to commit or undo those changes. So it gives you the ability to have someone fill in a bunch of data and then commit those changes all at once in a batch, or of course you can commit them immediately. It's really up to you. We give you the option. But now if I click commit, you'll see what this is returned. So there's a couple updates. So category ID 1 gets updated. These two items get deleted, so I can commit, discard, or cancel these. you can bypass this dialog as well. I'm going to go ahead and commit. So now my grid is all refreshed and actually looks really good. I mentioned display density earlier, so let me bring this sample up. What this demonstrates is the 3 options. So compact is what I was using for the financial grid. If I click cozy, you can see there's a little bit more space, and then comfortable would be the default material UI that we have. So based on how you want your theming and branding to appear, this is the experience that you'll also get. At the same time, if I drill into themes, we have an entire help section on theming, and we actually have more robust theming capability than you get with Angular. So we allow you to do things like change primary and secondary color, which would change the entire application, or go ahead and create as many custom classes as you want and then apply those palettes to any component that you want. And in this help file, we have a couple examples, not only in the docs, but if we look at a theming demo, we've done a couple sort of examples that show you how extreme you can get. So this would be a sort of a blue-gray theme. I'll change it to a custom dark theme, and then I'll change it to a black theme. So I'm not saying these are beautiful themes that you're going to go out and use. What these are doing is they're demonstrating to you how you can actually customize this experience for your own brand very easily with our theming capability. And then finally, before I move forward, I want to show the tree grid. This is a brand new component, highly requested, but a tree grid allows you to have fixed columns with self-referencing data. Very common for things like, the file manager, for financial statements are using tree grids, but a lot of financial services are using tree grids. We've added this component. The nice thing about the tree grid, it's the same underlying component as the grid, so anything that the grid can do, the tree grid can pretty much do. And then finally, before I hand the baton over to Brian, I want to highlight some of the new features in the chart on the annotations layers. So if you're doing charting, make sure you take a look at what we've done here with the annotation layers on the chart. It's actually pretty slick. Actually, let me jump over here real quick and get to the charting. Let's go to our category chart. So here, you'll see that as I'm hovering the mouse over the individual columns, the data on the vertical axis is changing. That's called the final value layer. So what it's doing is it's showing you the final value for every column that I'm hovering over. That's a new feature. Now, I can also do both crosshair markers, and they don't have to snap to the chart. So now I can free flow the mouse, and you can see it's like a little bit of a smoother experience. We can also do things like enable callouts. I can enable final value annotations besides what I'm hovering over inside of the chart itself, and I can disable or enable these crosshair annotations. Actually, that's what I was showing first, was the crosshair annotations. But the point of this is, as you get into more detailed data analysis with these charts, you're going to need this type of identification of data within a chart. Charts have more data, they're becoming denser, so the ability to do call-out layers, to have final value layers, to have different annotations as you move over the chart ends up being pretty important. So with that, what I encourage everyone to do is go to the Ignite UI for Angular sample browser, take a look at all of the new features that we've shipped. There's too many to show in a single webinar, but the nice thing is you can go and experience everything yourself. And at the same time, of course, every single sample on our website is viewable in StackBlitz, which means you not only can see the running sample, but you can actually fork it to GitHub. You can look at all the code that made up that sample. You can customize the data. You can pretty much do whatever you want. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Brian, who's going to pick up a demo on some of the new Excel features. So Brian, I will change the presenter over to you.
Perfect. All right, so this demo, I want to demonstrate just how easy it is to add Sparklines and charts to your Excel sheets without having Excel installed on the client machine. So the first thing I did is I added a NuGet package to our infragistics.wpf.excel library, and that brings in the documents.core as well. And once we have that, you can see I have a button click. It's a very simple application. What happens when I click this button, I create a new workbook, I add some data to it, and now I want to add a Sparkline to it. As you can see, the API is very simple for this. I'm creating a 2007 style workbook. I'm adding a worksheet to it called Sparkline Demo, and I'm adding data, and I've kind of commented the cells that this is going into. So whenever we add new complex features like this, like a Sparkline or like chart, we really try to make the API as simple as possible. My goal is always about one line of code. And it's not because I'm trying to be pretty, it's because I'm trying to be lazy. I don't like writing lines of code, right? So our goal is always one line of code. And for Sparkline, we achieve that goal. So to add a Sparkline, I'm simply going to say, let's go Sparkline, if I can spell, equals, and then we're going to get the worksheet that we have up top. We're going to get the Sparkline groups, and we're going to add a Sparkline. What kind of Sparkline do we want? Do we want a column, a line, or stacked? I don't know, let's go line. Next is the location range. Like, where are we putting this thing? Well, my last data cell is F2, so let's just put this in G2. And then finally, the data range. Where are we finding our data to power this Sparkline? It looks like we're A2 through F2, so I'm going to do the simple A2 through F2. Got my colon there. Looks good to me. Let's run the application. So literally, with one line of code, we're going to add a Sparkline powered by the data in these cells. Let's create the Sparkline. Click my little button. My code runs. We'll just call this my Sparkline. That works. That's fine. Once that saves, I'm going to open it up. Oh, and of course it opened on my other screen. Let me just drag it over. And there's my beautiful Sparkline. Pretty cool, right? Well, the best part about this is when I select the cell the Sparkline is in, notice I get the contextual design Sparkline tab in Excel. This is a true Excel object that we're converting this to. So I can sit here and manipulate the Sparkline I created in my C# application and sit here and manipulate every aspect of it as I wish, as it's a native Excel object now. I could save that out, and if I wanted to, I could even read it back in, manipulate it, and save it back out. We also have lots of options we can choose off the Sparkline. Like I could say, like, you know, Sparkline dot, I don't know, color series, for example, equals a new workbook color info, and we can change it to, like, I don't know, red. All right, so we have lots of options to manipulate the Sparkline properties from our API without having to go through Excel for that. Now, what about charts? Well, charts are pretty freaking cool. Charts are also a lot more complicated than a Sparkline. These are actually shapes as they exist in Excel. And, you know, I always have that goal. Man, I really want to keep this to one line. We got really close, but, you know, it's a little more than one line, but not bad, right? So let's start by creating a chart. We'll say chart equals worksheet. Worksheet, there we go. Dot shapes. Now in this case, since a chart in Excel is actually a shape, you add it to the shapes collection. And then we'll say add chart. Next, we're going to say, okay, what type of chart do you want? I don't know, how about a bar cluster? That sounds good. Now the rectangle, the bounds in twits. Basically, you know, where are we putting this thing? Well, we're going to put it in a new rectangle. And we want the first position to be 5,000. I don't know, next one, 100, sure. I'm just putting random numbers in here, 10,000. Basically, this says, where in the workbook are you putting it on an XY axis, like the top left-hand corner of the chart, where's this going to go? And then how wide do you want it and how tall do you want it? So we're just going to throw some numbers in here that I think are going to look good. Okay, next, we have a nice little lambda here we're going to throw in. And so we've defined the chart. Now the thing about the chart, we've defined the type, we know the location where we're going to put it, but now we need to set the data. Now you can do this a couple different ways. I like to do it inside this initialize here because this happens right before the chart is visualized, if you will. So I'm going to say set data source Okay, now in this one, where's the date range? Well, I have some code up here that generates a table with a lot of information in it. So you'll just have to trust me that I know it's from A1 to E8. And then this basically says plot by rows. This is how the data is turned on its axes in Excel. So I'm just going to say true for this. And then let's just run this as it is. I'm not going to really add anything else. I just want to see that my chart has some data. So once again, the good old click a button, make something happen. So let's click a button. My chart. We'll wait for that to save. And where did it put it? Oh, put it right over here on my other screen. Let me open that up. And there's our beautiful chart. Now, once again, just like the Sparkline example, this is a true Excel object. So I can come in here and I can say, oh yeah, I want to add a legend. There's my legend. You know, I want to add trend lines. I want to add a chart title. Sure, let's add a chart title, right? Or I could, you know, just close this out and stop the app. Let's say I want to set my chart title in here. Okay, fine. Chart title, whoops, equals new chart title. We'll do the old initializer here. We'll set the text to a new formatted string. Whoops, you need my equals. And I don't know, what do you want to say? You want to say just, I don't know, my chart data. Works for me. We don't care if it's misspelled. All right, so we'll run it. And of course it pops up over on the screen. We'll save it. We'll just override what we already had. And let me reopen that. And there you go. There's my weird, funky My Chart data title that we added via the API. So this is a true native Excel object. The beautiful part about it is you do not need Excel installed on the machine to create these workbooks. Not only can you create them, but you can also read and modify them, which is freaking amazing. Okay, so besides WPF, right, the beautiful thing about our Excel engine is it's on every platform we ship, and that means Angular. So right here, I have an Angular sample browser that will be available tomorrow to the public, but the API is very similar. It's just in TypeScript. So for the Sparkline example, you could say we're creating a workbook. We have some sheets. In this case, we're putting the data on a separate worksheet. So that's why there's a separate worksheet of add data. That's where the data is going, right? And then, you know, you say the Sparkline groups add. You can see the API is very similar. It's very close. So essentially, I'm going to take this grid. I'm going to export this to Excel. I'm just going to open it. And there we go. There's our Sparklines. In this case, they didn't use a line. It's a bar instead, right? That easy. Keep in mind, this is from an Angular application. You do not need any type of Excel engine or server or anything installed. It just works. It's pure TypeScript. Same for the charts, right? So on the chart sample here, if we scroll down, very similar API. We're adding to the shapes collection of the worksheet. We're adding a chart, the type of chart, where to put it, how big it is, and where to get the data. That's all you need to know. So for this example, we have our data chart here with a grid with just some random data inside of it. What I want to do is I want to convert this to an Excel dashboard report because my manager loves Excel and he loves reports in Excel and he loves to see charts. So I'm going to give him a chart in Excel, right? I'm going to make it look pretty. So I'm going to open up this, and there you go. The exact same view, if you will, that was running in my Angular application, I exported and mimicked that exact data into a dash report inside of Excel without having Excel installed. And that's the best part about it. All right, I'm done with Excel. George?
Hey, Brian, what if you click on that chart? Can I change those chart properties right in Excel?
Of course you can. So let me scroll over here. It's a native Excel object, right? So once you create that with our API, if you open it up in Excel, it's an Excel object. So I can come, yeah, let's add a legend. There's our legend. Let's bring this down. Let's move the legend to the bottom. right? Boom, there's the legend, move to the bottom. You can come into the design tab. Oh, what do you want this thing to look like? Oh, okay, that's kind of weird, but sure, that works, right? We switch rows and columns. We can change the way we, the X and Y axis work.
Nice.
Anything you want to do, anything you can do in Excel, you can do with our API.
I love it. Thanks.
Yep. All right, George, I'm going to hand it over to you so you can show off our awesome Indigo Sync tool.
Okay, so Jason actually kicked it off earlier. He mentioned about our Indigo Design story, and that's what you can find out more about it when you go to indigo.design. It's basically a unified platform which allows you to start in Sketch with our UI kits, publish into the cloud in order to get reviews and feedback and usability studies, and also start off with this whole process of generating Angular code. So today I'm going to show you briefly about how does this journey begin when you're operating inside of Sketch. And for that, we have this new Sketch plugin which lives inside Sketch. And for you to get access to it, all you need to do is come to our site, and when you just sign in from our site, like I'm already have my credentials here, I sign in, and you would see a pop-up which says download indigo.design assets. And this pretty much has everything you need to get started with indigo.design, which includes what we call our indigo.design system. These are all the Sketch libraries and includes the Sketch plugin. And we also have the code generator, which Brian will show you shortly after I finish my demo. And of course, Ignite UI for Angular, the UI framework which we use, is also available for you to download. Now, when I hit download from the Indigo Design System, it basically provides me this one zip folder, which is unzipped here, and it has this option which says Indigo Sync.sketch plugin. To install it in Sketch, all I need to do is just double-click it, and that's it. It's just installed, as simple as that. If I switch over to Sketch, once it's installed, you can access this plugin by just accessing this menu bar here, hitting plugin, and Indigo Sync is available right there. So what you're seeing here is pretty much a design which we call the budgeting app. And this has been created using our UI kits. And our UI kits are pretty much what you see here under components, patterns, and styling. I've already added these design libraries, but we'll definitely show you resources where you can get how to get started with adding these libraries and stuff. Now, once this plugin is installed, say I'm a designer, I just finished creating these designs, and I've also added some interactivity to this particular prototype. And now I want to send it to someone in order to either do customer feedback just to get reviews on this thing, or once I have validated in some way, I want to actually get send it to Brian so that he can actually generate code out of it. So to do that, I just come in here, hit plugin, Indigo Sync, and I hit publish. And that would pretty much pull up our plugin experience. And I'm already signed in. And it's basically saying, okay, what kind of device is this? So for me, it's a custom desktop application, and I can give it some size information, which I have for my artboard. And I can actually publish it to what we call a personal workspace in the cloud, or to a group workspace. And the concept of a group workspace is that in the cloud, there's this area where multiple people on the team have access to. So when I publish to a group workspace, say called customer success, what will happen is that Brian is, say, already a member of that group. He'll get notified when I publish these designs. And then I have some information to kind of add a title for this prototype. I can also define, provide a description for this thing. And I just hit publish. And once this publishing is complete, you will see this kind of a publish complete dialog. And from here, you have everything you need to trigger certain workflows. So one particular workflow is if you're a UX person and you want to get some usability study feedback, you can just hit create usability study, and it'll create a usability study based on this share. So for example, I hit create usability study here, and it basically fires up my browser, which is on my other screen. And you can see that this budgeting webinar, which is the app I was creating, and now I'm set up to create a study for this thing. Or I can just simply click on this URL here, and that basically launches the prototype experience, which I can now send it to my stakeholders so that they can review it from an end user perspective. They can actually see how this prototype actually functions, and they can provide feedback or commenting on top of it. So this is pretty much the prototype which I was creating, and now I can actually add feedback right on top of this prototype via comments. But we want to actually show how does this journey continue into code. And for that, all I had to do is go back to my sketch. I would just copy this link, and I can either send it to Brian, or Brian can basically access the link which he got from his from the notification Indigo.design sends out to him. Once you have published it in this way, and if you want to continuously make quick updates to your prototype, you don't actually have to go through this entire flow again. All you have to do is you made some changes to it, come back to this plugin, and we have even a handy shortcut for it. You can just say sync current, and it basically takes up whatever changes you've made. It remembers which was the prototype which was attached to it, and it will automatically update it in the cloud. So when Brian accesses the link, he will always have access to the freshest design which has been published from the design perspective. So now that I have finished the published story, Brian will show you what the journey looks like once he receives or has access to this link to this prototype. So
hey,
Brian,
George.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight something for everyone on the call, that a lot of guys, developers and design teams that I talk to, they are using InVision and they're using Sketch and they're paying extra money for these products. Well, everyone on the call, if you have Infragistics Ultimate, you already have what InVision gives you as far as sharing prototypes, collaborating, being able to do threaded commenting. But on top of that, you get the usability study features and then the code-gen features that we're going to show next. So we actually go above and beyond. So we would really love to get your feedback. If you're using InVision, let us know what gaps you might find in the Indigo Design story as far as just basic collaboration. And then maybe you can actually test out a usability study as well. So with that, yeah, let's pass it over to Brian, but I just wanted to highlight that as well.
Right. As Jason was saying, we have this whole prototyping in the cloud story also available for you to just start your designs in Sketch and still be able to do prototypes, whether you're creating your designs in PowerPoint or whatever tool you might like. As long as there are images available, you can just come to the cloud and start adding, links and hotspots to connect designs to one another. Right. So Brian, I'm going to make you the presenter, and you can show the next part of the journey.
Perfect. Okay, so I want to just take a moment to highlight one thing. So if you go to infragistics.com/products/indigo-design, scroll down to the bottom, near the bottom, to the app gallery. So this budget management app, this is the exact app that George was just demonstrating. So you can download the sketch file to see how it was built. Here is the link to the actual prototype. So if I click on this, it's going to open up that prototype in my browser, and I can sit here and I can click through it and say, oh, okay, how's this thing work? What's my profile look like, right? How to get to my budget management screens. And so you can sit here and play and click around and see what happens and just have fun with it, okay? You also get the actual completed Angular application. So you can download this, do an npm install to bring in all the dependencies, of course, do a serve, and boom, you're up and running. Playing with this application locally within Visual Studio Code. You get to see all the code. We also have a people app you can play with, same thing, sketch file, prototype, and code. So I'm inside Visual Studio Code, and all I've done was created a basic Angular application using the Angular CLI. That's it. There's nothing else in here. So now what happened is, our designers created this beautiful design, and the stakeholders went through the prototype, they did the usability studies, and they buy off on the design, they buy off on the interaction, so like, okay, we validated this design, you're good to go. Now the designer comes to me, the developer says, Brian, you see this cool freaking design? Like, yeah, I want you to write this in Angular. I'm like, oh my God, really? I'm looking at them like they're crazy. Like, oh my, this is gonna be a lot of work, a lot of CSS, a lot of HTML, this is gonna take me forever. I'd really like to just focus on business logic, but I can't do that. I gotta make this design match this JPEG that the designer gave me. Well, not with our system. With our system, because you're using Indigo, we can actually launch what's called our Indigo Design Code Generator. So when I launch this generator, and it, opened up on the screen, so I'll drag this over. What this allows me to do is that link that George created, he's going to send that to me. And he already did. He already sent it to me, so no need to paste it again. And here's the budget app. So we paste in the link. We hit enter. What happens is it loads that design that was uploaded to Indigo, right? So once that design loads, it's going to list all the views, right, all the artboards that are in that design. So here's all the artboards that were in that design that were uploaded to Indigo.design. So I can scroll through here, and you know what? I'm going to take a very pragmatic approach. It's a brand new app. The first thing I want to do is log in. That's the first thing I do in an app. So I'm going to pick this login screen. Now, the right-hand side, you're going to see a tree-like structure that allows you to drill down, and you'll see these little check boxes. Well, as you know, Angular is component-based. So what we do is we create components off the items you select. Now, I don't care about this top navigation bar because this is nav. That's going to belong in the shell in my master page, if you will, right? My app component. So I'm not going to generate that. What I do need is the entire login screen section, which makes up all this information. So I'm going to check just the login screen. Now I can name it. I'm going to keep it login screen. I can tell it what module to go in. You know what? I'm going to keep the login screen module. Doesn't matter. If I already knew the objects that were going to power this screen via data binding, I can put in the name of that object, like, I don't know, person authentication model or whatever you want to call it, right? And then we would create bindings for you automatically. I also have options to change my generation settings, like your application prefix, where the images go. Do you want single or double quotes? How you want to handle theming, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Generate Code Assets. Now what happens, it's going to update my entire project for me. It's going to create the component. It's going to create the module. It's going to add all the HTML, the TypeScript, the CSS. Right here, it's going to say, hey, you have some packages that aren't installed. Do you want to install them? Yes, let's install the NPM packages. That's bringing in the Infragistics Ignite UI for Angular NPM packages. We're going to get our spec test file. We're going to update our app.module.ts with our imports and our modules. It's going to do all that for me automatically. So right now we're installing the required packages. You can see my my little indicator here at the bottom. Shouldn't take too long.
Brian, there was a question about, while this is going, what if I'm not using Sketch? And maybe talk about the UI kits a little bit and how they map to the Angular and how that story actually works to complete this whole process.
Right. So as it is today, if you were to go download this today, you have to have Sketch installed. Okay, you have to have Sketch for now. So what we do is we provide what's called a UI kit. Oh, hold on, I'm getting prompted to override my module and my Angular.json. Okay, so we have these UI kits for various IDEs, the first one being Sketch. So what you do is you use our UI kits, which make up components like our grids and our charts and our avatars and our buttons and all of the controls that have a one-to-one mapping to our Ignite UI for Angular product. So for now, we have UI kits for Sketch. So when you create anything in Sketch, you're using our UI kit. We map that directly. We can code gen anything. We are in the process of investigating other IDEs for our UI kits, such as Adobe XD. I think that's the next one on our backlog that we're seriously looking into, trying to figure out how we're going to support that. And then any other, popular market gaining IDE we would also look at to support this. We also, I don't know, can I tell them about this, Jason?
Yeah, basically we're probably going to announce more in January of 2019 about removing the requirement for that design tool altogether.
Yeah, so I'm glad you let me say this. I'm really excited about this, all right? You guys are the first to hear this, honestly. We are removing the dependency on IDEs altogether, and essentially we are going to build our own screen designer that goes right into Indigo.design that will allow you to design your screens without having to buy any other third-party tool right within Indigo.design, and we will generate off that directly. We also have big plans for that from Visual Studio Code extensibility, where you'll be able to open up an extension similar to this dialog that we just saw for code generation, and you'll be able to design your own components real-time in Visual Studio Code using our UI kit, and boom, just generate all the code right there. We're talking high productivity. You're not wasting your time worrying about, where this pixel goes, where that div is, where this CSS class goes. We'll handle all that for you. All you'll have to do is concentrate on business logic, which is amazing. Okay, so my application has been completed. The update is done. As you can see, we have a couple new folders with our imports. We have our login screen. We have the CSS for it. The SCSS, we have the HTML, the spec file. We have everything that's required for that. We have the module that we said. If we open up our module TS file, you can see that we've imported the login screen module. We've added it as a module to our ng module declaration. I mean, really, it's done everything for you. The next step we have to do is I will delete this. I'm going to add the app-login, I think it's -screen. Let's just do a npm, whoop, not there, in the terminal, npm install. I just want to make sure I have all my dependencies locally. This shouldn't take too long, but my VS Code is definitely running sluggish for some reason. Might help if I close the 7 instances of Visual Studio I have open. So once all these dependencies are, oh, there we go, that didn't take long at all, are loaded, let's go ahead and go npm or ngserve. Should just take a second. All right, and there's my local host. All right, almost done. Right there, boom. All right, so I'm just going to open up this local host here. Boom, right there. That is that login screen, pixel perfect to the design that came from Sketch. This is what my designer wanted. That's what my designer got, and I didn't even have to write it, right? So let's just take a quick look at the HTML, because I want you to see this is not like your like nasty, ugly HTML. This is very well structured, CSS based. We use divs. You know, we try to do it the right way. We try to lay out the right way, and it's very clean code, right? So if you did have to go in here and modify it by hand, not a big deal. All right, that's all the time I have for my demo. I'm handing it back over to Jason.
All right, that's awesome. Thanks, Brian. Hopefully, everyone could see how 18.2 and the entire Infragistics Ultimate product can really help you drive these amazing experiences for modern app design and development. And of course, we have to include design. Every customer I go to today, there's a designer in the room. There's 10 designers. I was at a customer last week. They have like 50 designers. I mean, design is part of delivering competitive differentiation today. That's where Indigo Design comes into play. And then that's where all of the Infragistics Ultimate tool sets come into play. WPF, Windows Forms, jQuery, Angular, soon to be React and Web Component. And as Brian mentioned, we're going to continue to invest across all of the current and modern design tools. So the call to action is download Ultimate today. Just go to infragistics.com/ultimate. If you are a customer, just sign in and your My Keys and downloads, and you can grab the bits. If you just want a trial, just go ahead and fill out your name and email, and you can download the trial. And then finally, the most common question about these webinars is, yes, we have recorded this webinar. It will be available online. We're going to send an update either today or tomorrow, a follow-up with the link. And with that, I want to thank everyone. We'll stay online for a few minutes and answer any questions. But we appreciate you as customers, and we hope you enjoy Ultimate. And as I mentioned in one of the chats, everything we do is based on customer feedback. So make sure to get a hold of us and let us know what you want in the product. Thanks for listening.